Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's start today's video from the situation on the ground as usual. So Russia today tried to attack Sumy region apparently. Well, at least we have the information about it from the soldiers on the place and also from the reports of the command unit which is placed in Sumy. But this Russian attack wasn't successful at all. They tried to cross the border and were totally demolished. Moreover, according to the information I have, the defense in Sumy, the defense lines, are very robust, even compared to the Kharkiv Oblast. The Kharkiv defense wasn't done properly, but nevertheless, Russian operation there failed. As we understand, they were not able to reach their goal. And according to the latest reports from the Russian soldiers, well, they lost thousands of their troops out there. This attack attempt towards Kharkiv, well, it was just nonsense. Well, according to the latest information, the advancement of the Russian army was towards Novgorod-Siversky, this attack attempt, but again, it was repelled. The Sumy city is over here, so it's the northern part of Ukraine, where the Chernihiv Oblast is very close. In his interview the last week, the intelligence chief of Ukraine, Davydov, warned about the possible cases. He mentioned that there is the constant threat from the Russian side. My friends, if you like the job that I do daily here on YouTube, you might also consider supporting me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available in the video description just below. Thank you so much for your motivation. Then YouTube cancels monetization. So as I say to you, the Russian army goes all in, yes, with the heavy losses, but now their goal is to show that they are capable to do it, even with the heavy losses, with all of those midwaves. But military analytics and media sources continue to say that Russia is struggling with their manpower and also with their armored vehicles. For example, The Economist says about this Russian issue. The main problem for Russia that the stocks of the Soviet-made artillery systems and tanks might be depleted by 2025, so they're using this time that they're still capable, and then Ukraine still doesn't have enough military support to advance in many points of the front lines. The advancement is not significant, but nevertheless they show that they have the initiative. Also, Russia tries to compensate the losses in the armored vehicles by putting its economy to the war rails. But the production quality of the military vehicles dropped dramatically because there's simply lack of the spare parts which were previously produced by the Western countries. Now China tries to replace that, but still they have the problem with the army men. Officially, Russia hires around 40,000 soldiers per month, but if we check out the actual figures presented by many of the independent sources, it's around 25,000 soldiers per month. Still a lot, but they are unable to compensate the current Russian losses, because if you check any sort of the statistics, Russia currently loses around 1,000 armored personnel per day, 1,000 per day, wounded and KIA. And altogether there are 470,000 soldiers of the Russian army fighting in Ukraine. Official Russia said about 700,000, which is not true. Also, if we check out the Russian army stocks, well, most of their old tanks were stored just open air. They definitely require significant maintenance, and Russia is out of the maintenance facilities for those ancient tanks. Currently, no spare parts are produced for the tanks which were made in Stalin's period. So what we see on the Russian trains is mostly old garbage. Yes, the Russian military factories are still trying to repair those tanks, but Russian soldiers continue to complain about the poor maintained armored vehicles and tanks. So Russia has to search for some sort of the units which are not in that terrible state. It means that the actual stocks of the Russian army are much lower because of the poor open-air storage. You may say that the other countries, like for example the United States of America, store their vehicles also open air, but there is a big difference to store the tanks open air somewhere in Siberia or in the desert with a very dry climate. As for the sensitive equipment, usually it's been removed from the tanks or any other armored vehicle and stored in those kind of the containers or in hangars. But in the Russian case, it wasn't done like that. That's why they're now struggling. But let's go again to the situation on the ground. You know that recently Russia started their offensive towards Turetsk and New York. So how about the Russian losses in this place? Well, for the last week, we know that they've lost more than 1,000 soldiers out there in a single direction, which is not really that hot compared to, for example, Ocheretine or the northern part of the Kharkiv region with Vovchansk city. We know it by the published documents that the Russian soldiers just went missing. Missing, it doesn't mean lost. It means that they just couldn't find the bodies or those soldiers. So totally there are 194 of the names, and those are not the losses, those are missing army personnel. But for the losses, it's more than 1,000 army personnel. I know it from the same source which publishes this information, and some of those soldiers are really young. Like for example, Belikov Grigory was born in 2003, so he is 21 years old, was probably in this case. And we have one more video of the confirmation of the terrible Russian losses. This time the Russian officer of 138th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Army tells about the losses. He said that officially they lost 6,000 men in his army brigade, but unofficially 12,000. 12,000 in a single brigade. How is it happening? Well, unprepared, poorly trained soldiers just go to this brigade, they find themselves 2 feet under the ground, and then newcomers are coming again and again. Sorry guys, for today I don't have time to put subtitles. I'll try to do it later on my Telegram channel, publishing this video. So we have many of the signs that the Russian limited advantage which they have on the front lines will be seized down to nothing. One more issue for the Russian army, that because they are in lack of the spare parts which are made in the West, they are unable to maintain their armored vehicles properly, because the resource of the equipment which is used to maintain the armored vehicles or tanks is not infinite, so they need new spare parts, high voltage or low voltage systems in the vehicles, and sometimes China is just unable to feed that standards for the massive production. That's why Russians complain about poor electronics which was put in their vehicles as the replacement. Also before the war there were many of the military facilities in Ukraine which supplied some of the parts for the military units in Russia, especially Motor Siege Company, which produced the engines for the Russian helicopters, and Russia started the production of the helicopter engines themselves, but they are still unable to cover their own needs, so they need Ukrainian factory Motor Siege, which by the way was sold to China at some point, and later on Ukraine confiscated the factory from China. China tried to sue Ukraine for that action, but it didn't help. You may say that Russia has their friends like North Korea, which supplies some of the artillery shells to the Russian army, but those shells are also not a good quality shells. That's why they worn down the Russian artillery barrels much faster. So for this day, according to the experts, Russia requires around 7,000 barrels to be changed on their artillery systems. In their storage facilities, they were only able to find 4,800. And I believe that not all of those barrels are in the good condition after the poor storage. For this reason, if the current scale of the war intensity continues, by the second half of 2025, Russia will have a critical situation with their armored vehicles, artillery, tanks, and BMPs, BTRs, everything. This process is just imminent. Russia doesn't have so many resources to replace the current crazy losses. So we may come to conclusion that the intensity of the fight will drop by 2025, because Ukraine unfortunately is also out of the resources to perform massive counterattacks on the front lines, gaining more territories as it was in 2022. For example, Bundestag passed the budget for 2025, yes, it's Germany, where the military support of Ukraine dropped by 2 times. So this year Ukraine will obtain 800 billion euros from Germany for its military, and the next year it will be 4 billion euros. Still better than nothing, but we see that gradually Ukraine gets less and less military support. In parallel, the Russian army also struggles. It means that the intensity of the fight just cannot continue with the current pace and with the current losses. Plus, there is a big chance that after presidential elections in the United States of America will reduce or even completely cancel the military support of Ukraine, and probably you understand why, because there are many signals telling that new White House administration, if it will be the new White House administration, is willing to cancel the support. Well, I would be very surprised if Donald Trump will continue the support of Ukraine. Even this year is not good for Ukrainian military support because we see less tanks, less capable tanks, for example, Leopard 2, which were only supplied by Spain this year to Ukraine, but there will be more of the air defense systems and the fighter jets sent to Ukraine. But in general, the last year was much better for Ukrainian army in terms of the vehicles, artillery systems and other munition. Well, some of the countries still send the Leopard 1 tanks, for example, but those are much less capable compared to Leopard 2. And you know, after all, some of the modern-made tanks, I mean Western-made and the Russian-made tanks, are just not capable with nowadays worst scenario. For example, the Abrams tanks were in lack of the drone protection. That is why our guys put those meshes on the top and also contact one armor just in case. Well, tanks are still decisive machinery on the warfields, but now we see that they are as vulnerable as never, or as ever. How is better to say? Well, I think you understand what I mean, and unfortunately Ukraine lost some of the Abrams tanks because they were not equipped with this protection against the drone strikes. Alright guys, I told you about some of the Russian losses, for example, for the battle for Toretsk, but also for the first time probably we have Ukrainian missing losses. A recent report done by Ukrainian officials is saying that in Krinky alone Ukraine lost 788 soldiers missing. In such a tiny part of the land, 788 missing. For all of those months, and registered losses, well, they are just huge, unfortunately. Maybe that is why it was the prompt decision from Ukrainian military command to withdraw the forces from Krinky because of those crazy losses. In this case, I don't think that this operation was really worth it. Yeah, the Russian propaganda already took those figures, but Russians, come on, in Toretsk's direction for a single week, you lost more than 1,000 soldiers, and here the battle was for many months. Our guys were under the constant artillery fire, plus Russia bombed them with aviation gliding bombs, so it was really terrible conditions for Ukrainian soldiers out there. But in general, yes, the Krinky is the direction where Ukraine has big losses. You know guys, today I check out the Russian news and they have numerous of the blackouts with bordering oblasts with Ukraine. Belgorod, Rostov-on-Don, all of that stays without electricity. And there are several reasons why is it happening like that. First of all, Ukrainian drone strikes. After the recent Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, Ukraine decided to respond with the same coin. The second reason for the blackouts is the severe heat in the Russian Federation, as well, by the way, as in Ukraine. So the energy generation facilities are unable to cope with that heat. The equipment of the Russian power plants is just worn out and unable to cope with these severe conditions. Plus, people load the lines with their air conditions. So for several days there are definitely many of the blackouts, but Putin blamed Bitcoin for this, and cryptocurrency in general. He gave the short interview, and yes, I took it from the Astra channel, that's why we have this watermark. Anyways, Putin blames the mining factories. Yes, Putin, yes, those are not the drones, those are not the issues with your power generation, those are just mining farms. Yep. And actually this situation is good for Ukraine because this dictatorship regime doesn't see the log in its eye. It tries to hide from the real problems. It means that those will definitely deteriorate with time. The Russian so-called Foreign Minister Lavrov also gave the short interview today where he spoke that Russia needs definitely guarantees for its security and they're ready to negotiate about Ukrainians' topic on that kind of the term. Just to recall, right before the full-scale war, Russia demanded some sort of the security guarantees from the NATO countries, and they even wanted some countries to give up the NATO membership, as far as I remember, to return back to 1991 year, then the Baltic countries for sure were not the NATO members, but now Finland and Sweden also joined NATO group. And also Lavrov said that they have the secret talks with Western representatives, yes, not at the high level, but at the middle one. Why secret? Well, because no one spoke about those openly. Yemeni Houthis applied some of the sanctions on the Russian oil. They hit the tanker that was moving from Tuapse to China. That's how Russia sells their oil to China, mostly by tankers. The tanker, by the way, wasn't the Russian one, but the oil inside was Russian. I think that Yemeni Houthis at some point will cause tremendous ecological disaster in the region because they target everything, container ships, ferries, and especially those kind of the tankers, because they have lots of the oil inside. And those Houthis, well, they live in a place and they want to cause the ecological disaster for themselves. For me, it's not understandable, but you see that China probably will be mad about the case. If you wonder about the quality of one of the most popular Russian supply vehicle, Bukhanka, which is currently made, yes, without changes for around 60 years, well, here we have the brief review of one of the Russian visitors, because you can actually buy this car in the Russian shop for nearly 2 million rubles. For the current official Russian rate, it's $22,598. You understand that the car is new, but it has no electronics and nothing really that sophisticated inside for this enormously huge price. So he shows how the metal is prepared before the painting. We can see the poor welding job elsewhere. Over here too. All of that, 2 million rubles. It's just crazy. Look at this upper part. Elon Musk, look at this car. What did they do with welding here? It's just... And already corrosion in the new car. But do you think that the Cybertruck is much better? Yes, it is much better, but in one of the communities of the United States, the truck looks very similar to the trash bin. So the problem is that raccoons think that Cybertruck is the trash bin and they try to get in. And by doing so, raccoons cause damage to the Cybertrucks, like here we may see it. They even left some of the evidence there. What do you think? Was Elon Musk inspired by this trash bin? Because raccoons see no difference. Great news, there was the exchange of the prisoners. 95 of the Ukrainian soldiers went to their homeland and 95 of the Russian soldiers were sent back to Russia. I'm very happy that the process of the exchange was restarted recently. Some interesting news are coming from Greece. They want to send their F-16 fighter jets to the United States of America for the deep modernization, and after that job is done by the United States military, they're gonna send those planes to Ukraine. We're speaking about 36 of the airplanes. Instead, Greece might obtain more F-35s in its air force, and by the way, F-35 contract already been negotiated with Greece. But some of the F-16s will still remain in the Greece Air Force. They will be also modernized to the better version. Probably you remember the Russian submarine that was targeted by the Storm Shadow missiles in Sevastopol port. It obtained severe damages, while Russians claim that they were able to repair this submarine. Well, honestly, I don't think that it was really possible, and we don't see any sort of the evidence that this submarine is still running. Russians published those photos of their artillery system Malva, its 152 caliber artillery system, which was damaged by the shrapnel of the HIMARS German-Res missile. As you can see, all of the tires are flat because debris went inside, but some of the small shrapnel balls went inside the construction. As far as I remember, those are made out of tungsten, so they're very sturdy, robust, and may penetrate absolutely everything. Even metal constructions, as you see. But in general, unfortunately, the vehicle is repairable. To some of the political news, well, Joe Biden got COVID. He was diagnosed with that today. He was out to go to Las Vegas to give some sort of the speech, but he cancelled his trip. Donald Trump said that Taiwan should pay for the United States defense as it doesn't give us anything. He compared the United States with some sort of the insurance company, and Taiwan should pay for insurance. He also mentioned that they've took all of the production of the chips and they're very rich, so they should pay us. Well, probably Trump means TSMC company, and definitely they produce the high quality, very sophisticated chips, the most sophisticated in the world. But what they also do, they invest into the United States by building one of the biggest factories out there. For example, in Arizona, and they invest 12 billion United States dollars into the project. So with that huge number and this huge project, I may disagree with the statement of Donald Trump about TSMC not investing into the United States, basically taking the money from America. No, it's the global corporation. It has the base in Taiwan, but it is also looking for the possibilities to expand, working together with the United States. And by the way, the United States itself started the production of the chips, but not in the United States. They started the production of those in South Korea. Those transnational corporations are above the country borders or the countries themselves, so accusing Taiwan of something is just a populist statement. And by the way, Trump is selling those kind of the sneakers with iconic photo of him right after the assassination attempt. I think that the price of those is around $300. It's, by the way, not the paid advertisement on my channel. But I'm sure that people will buy them because Trump has enormous support, especially in some certain states, by some certain people which push him to win the elections, probably. We'll see. Because the polls now say that the Trump has the lead. Well, there's still a long time till the actual elections. We're gonna see. Everything might happen. The politician life in the United States is definitely hard to predict. You know, guys, it's been already 10 years since Russia shut down the Malaysian Boeing 777, the flight MH17 from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And it was just the beginning of the massacres which Russia continued to do, not just in Ukraine, but as you can see elsewhere, to any sort of the nationalities, any sort of the religions. They simply don't care. Russia is the aggressor right now, and it should be treated as aggressor by all of the countries. But unfortunately, I see the signs from the Western politicians that they're really ready to negotiate with Putin about something. But Putin is this. Putin is just a terrorist. So he should be just punished. Their negotiations with those kind of people will not bring peace. That's why we need more strict sanctions against Russia and also to arm Ukraine even more. With this particular case, Russia tried to speculate, but finally the official report and official investigation showed of who was guilty about the case. The robust evidence was presented, but Russia still says it wasn't us. Guys, I wish one day we're gonna see all of those people responsible for this terrible event in the hog court, including Putin himself. My friends, as you know, I have the Telegram channel, and recently I found out that probably by mistake me or my administrators banned some of the users from the comments. I've got the messages even from my Patreon supporters that they do support me for a very long time and on Patreon as well, but at the same time they got banned on my Telegram group. So we are fighting against trolls, bots and scammers. So if you somehow find yourself banned, you may go to the video description or to the pinned comment where you may find my email, and there you may explain me your particular situation and what happened to you. So I will look for it personally and decide to resolve it. For now, the banning on Telegram will be limited just for the scammers and the bots. That's it. We're not going to ban some of the offensive comments for my personal side. No, I'm quite okay with haters. Let them be. But the bots and scammers will be banned from the Telegram group. But I have tons of mail, so it might take me some time to respond. Sorry. Alright guys, and now let's go briefly for the frontline updates. Unfortunately for today, just enemy advanced in many of the areas. Well, actually just few of the areas. 3 of the points we have in Kalinivka over here. This is the Chasiv Yar area. Let's go to the timeline. It was yesterday, and unfortunately Russia fully occupied Kalinivka village. But still there is the war channel and they're unable to cross it for now. Also, Russia was successful near Karlivka village. Probably they moved towards the Dachi area. Yes, yesterday and it is today. plus this gray area, and just a matter of time then Russia occupies those fields. I believe that it happens very, very fast, and Ukraine still has the time to withdraw the forces because Russia is aiming towards blocking this way out for Ukrainian army from this area. Well, still there is the channel from this side, but I think this way is better to move the forces out. So in the coming week, I think they will occupy this part. And also Russia advanced near Zalizne. Zalizne is the Toretsk direction, the direction where Russia suffers lots of the losses. So yesterday and today just a light advancement, and in New York they went sideways. So yesterday and today there was just a gray area extension. In some of the areas near Novomikhailivka, for example, Ukraine also has the counterattack vector to repulse the Russian attack attempts. At the same time, both of the sides have losses. As you see over here, the analysis presented by the Micro 73, but usually Russians have many more losses compared to Ukrainian army. Maybe coincidence or not, but after Orban's peace trip, Ukraine decided to apply the sanctions on the Russian oil, which goes to Hungary. We are speaking about this part of the Druzhba pipeline. The pipeline goes from Russia to Belarus, then to Ukraine and directly to Hungary. It is actually the main pipeline for Hungary to obtain the oil, and now Ukraine cancelled that. So even though Hungary received an exemption from the European sanctions on the Russian oil, Ukraine applied those sanctions. Something went definitely wrong in Orban's plan for Orban. I wonder for how long Ukraine will continue to block the pipeline, but I don't think that there will be a huge pressure from the other Western allies on Ukraine to unblock, because the other countries, well, they have their alternates. And now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as always, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.